Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Becky, and we're parents to two little kids. Parenting isn't always easy. There are ups and downs, good days and bad days, days with way too much TV, and days with lots of laughter. Moments where you just feel overwhelmed, and moments where you've never felt more proud.
At the end of the day, parenting is super rewarding, but also super hard. This podcast is for all the parents out there who feel like they have no idea what they're doing, because we're right there with you. This is the Spillproof podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. We're happy you're here. And today, we're talking about the births of our children.
It's a birthing stories.
Whoop, whoop. I know we've talked about being pregnant, and we have talked about their births a little bit, but
Here and there.
yeah, we wanted to really detail their birthing stories, not just for you guys, but selfishly for ourselves, so that we remember as much as we can about these 2 days.
Yeah, and our both births were very different too, so we kind of had a broad spectrum of experiences when it came to the births of both our kids. Enough to where I don't think we need to do it again.
Yeah, we're good. We got 2 kids. They're beautiful. They're perfect, and I never want to be pregnant again.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good.
So before we dive into this, I did want to say we really enjoyed our hospital. We went to a great hospital. The staff was great. We were happy with both of our overall experiences, barring some things that we'll talk about. But the overall experience, the hospital was fantastic. It's the reason why we went back a second time with Emily.
I mean, you also don't have a choice. It's where your doctor is.
Well, that too. But we could have changed doctors had it been.
Had it been horrible, I guess, but no,
Right.
we had great doctors.
I mean, it happens.
It does.
So, yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out there just so everyone knew that we were very happy with, even if we're mentioning that maybe some things happened that weren't great. The overall experience was really good.
Yeah, and there's obviously a ton of emotion when you're there. And like for me, I'm in pain for part of it. So like my view of things could potentially be skewed. And Dave is seeing his wife in pain and worrying about his kids during certain instances, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So like there's emotion that is, like we probably weren't thinking rationally the whole time. So
Probably not. Not in the moment.
yeah.
But overall, I think we were.
I don't know. Labor sucks. So
So, where do you want to start?
let's start with our firstborn, Owen.
That would be Owen. Yep.
So Owen was late. I
Very
am
late.
an impatient person to begin with. And like it's hard for me to wait to give Dave his birthday presents until his birthday. I have very little patience just in general.
It's funny to watch though.
I'm sure that's nice of you to say it's funny to watch instead of
It's entertaining.
good. Well, that's good. So yeah, Owen was late. He did not show up until 41 weeks. And actually the day before we were supposed to go in at 41 weeks, we were supposed to have an appointment that day with our OB to talk about inducing me because like I was not dilated. I like nothing was going on. He was good in there. He was chilling. He was not coming out. So we were going to go in the next day to talk about being induced. And I was like, Dave, I'm bringing all of our stuff with us because I'm not leaving without being induced. Like I'm having this kid tomorrow. I'm not leaving. Like, and our appointment was at the hospital. It was like it was connected to the hospital that we ultimately had Owen at. So I was like, I'm going to walk across that little walkway and we're going to be induced that day. But we didn't have to get that far because the day before, during the day, I actually worked from home that day. And because I just wasn't feeling, not that I wasn't feeling like great, but I was just like 41 weeks pregnant and didn't feel like going into the office. So I worked from home, and during that day I started to have some contractions. They really just felt like bad period cramps, for me at least.
And they happened they started earlier in the day, if I remember
yeah,
right.
they started at like 10 or 11, but they were like 20, every 20, 30 minutes, like super random. And I just started noticing them more, and I was like, oh, I'm having this feeling again. Oh, okay, I'm having this feeling again. My mom came over and brought me lunch, and I had mentioned it to her. I was texting Dave, and then like throughout the afternoon, my mom actually stayed because she was like, oh, if you're in labor, like I want to be here and like hang out with you. So she kind of just like hung around the house, and they started to get more regular, but they were still like 10, 15 minutes apart, and then 10, and they were slowly getting closer together. And I remember texting Dave or calling you, I can't remember, and being like, hey, they're getting closer and closer together, because you worked till 8 o'clock that night.
Yeah, I was still at work.
Yeah.
I remember I actually left like an hour early.
You did. You left at like, 6 or 7. You left early because I was like, you should come home now, because at that point they were like 5 or 6 minutes apart or something. Maybe like 6 minutes apart. And I was like, you should come home now just in case. Because then you came home and we had dinner, which was it was not smart of me to eat dinner. We'll get to that.
Yeah, we had Panera bread,
I think. Panera. Yeah, I had the like Chipotle chicken avocado melt.
And you've had one since?
I have had one since, shockingly. Yeah, so that day, once I was like about, I want to say like 6, 7 minutes apart, I was like, you should come home, because once you hit 5 is what our birthing class said is when you should like call the doctor.
5 minutes.
5 minutes apart for an hour. So it's like
contractions.
Yeah, your contractions are 5 minutes apart, and they've lasted an hour consistently, five minutes apart. And I think by the time we actually called, they were like 4 minutes apart.
Yeah, they were pretty close.
Yeah, so we called the doctor, and they were like, yep, come in. So we already had our bags packed, because obviously we were overdue.
Yeah, we expected it to happen at any point in time.
Yeah, so we went, we drove to the hospital. We didn't know how
stubborn he was going to be.
Yeah, and we went through triage. And it's funny looking back at Owen, because it was not obviously during pandemic. And
Right.
It was so like it was just more relaxed, because it wasn't in the middle of a pandemic. Like it was more, you were more focused on like, I was more focused on like getting through each contraction rather than like don't touch anything.
Yeah, the differences were pretty big, and
Yeah.
we'll talk about that too, because as we might have mentioned before, Emily was a pandemic baby, and we don't mean was conceived during pandemic like a lot of people say. She was born during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like straight in the middle of it.
Yeah. So I remember like leaning up like during check-in, leaning up against a wall, having contractions, because there was like 2 people in front of us who were also checking in that night. It was a very full night.
Yeah, I think they said that they had barely any rooms. In
They
fact, we
didn't
had to
have a room for us.
We had to
initially.
wait until, was it 1 o'clock?
Yeah, it was after midnight to
that we
actually
finally
be
got our
admitted.
room. So we were in triage we got there around 8:30, I want to say.
Yeah.
And we were there till at least 1, if not 1:30.
Yeah, we were there for a long time. So I have a question for you, Dave.
Yeah.
What was going through your head as we were kind of like, I was like finishing my laboring here at home before we left?
I was trying to remember everything that I was supposed to do. And then I realized I don't remember what I'm supposed to do other than get you to the hospital.
Okay.
And make sure that you were comfortable. And that was about it until we got to triage. And then it was, oh my gosh, there's vomit everywhere.
Yeah. Yes, there was, because my contractions got really bad. And at that point they were like, we got to triage, and they were like every 3 minutes.
They were very, very consistent.
They were really, yeah. And like, it was literally every 2 to 3 minutes.
And then you projectile vomited.
I was like, Dave, I don't think I feel good. I feel like I'm going to be sick. I was like having a contraction, and then would like come off of the contraction and be like, I'm going to be sick. I'm going to be sick. And so Dave was trying to like bring a trash bin closer to me,
Yep.
and I just projectile vomited Panera, Chipotle,
Everywhere.
avocado Chipotle chicken melt.
And then I had to run out
everywhere.
and find a nurse because it was so late that there was like one nurse on or something like that. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, you found one pretty quick, but like
But I had to go to like this nurse's
the
station to
station,
find
you were like,
a
my
nurse.
wife just puked everywhere. And I remember the nurse came in and she was like, well, you shouldn't have eaten dinner. Why did you eat dinner? And I remember thinking, my brother told me they aren't going to let you eat food for a really long time before, when you're laboring. So like eat before you go to the hospital. He's like, that's my biggest piece of advice is like eat before you go to the hospital. That was the wrong advice because I threw it all up and then.
Well, it's a funny thing about doctors. When they tell you not to eat or they don't want you to eat, there's probably a good reason for it.
Yeah. So
you can thank your brother for that.
My advice for everyone out there is do not listen to someone who's never been pregnant or had a baby and is not a medical professional for your advice on what to do before you go to the hospital. Lesson learned.
Yeah.
So then we got, finally someone was able to come and check and see if I was dilated. And not going to lie, my contractions were 3-4 minutes apart.
Yep.
And I was like, we must at least be halfway there. Not dilated at all.
Nope.
Nothing, not dilated at all. They were like, oh, even the doctor that checked me was a little bit surprised because my contractions were so close together and very
we had
intense.
been in there for hours at this point.
Well, no, they had checked me before. When we first got in, they checked me.
Right. But between then and when that was, there should have been some progress.
Yeah, nothing had happened. So I think you and I were both super, we were disappointed at that point because we were like, oh, what's I'm having contractions. I remember asking, am I having real contractions? They're like, yes, we can see on the monitor that you're having real contractions. And then I remember very vividly one of the doctors, it wasn't a doctor from our practice,
No,
but
it was a different one.
The partnering one. And they were like, since you're 41 weeks, we're going to keep you here. Also, your son's heart rate has varied a little bit and has dropped a little bit.
Yeah, but that was after they tried to send us home.
That was after they tried to send us home.
Yeah, they tried to send us home at one point.
Yeah, they did we're going to wait an hour.
They gave us a choice. They said, listen, we know you have the doctor's appointment tomorrow. If you want, you can go home and then.
Oh, I forgot that.
Yeah, and then if you feel the contractions or whatever, come on back, or we can put you under observation for 45 minutes.
That's right. And we said we'll go for observation.
So they put the double monitor on your belly, and that's when they realized that there was something going on.
Okay. I totally forgot
and this
that.
is why it's great to talk about it.
This is why, yeah. I 100% forgot that happened. But yeah, they wouldn't have caught that his heart rate was dropping if we didn't say, no, we want to stay. But I think at that point, I was like, I'm not leaving.
No, we had talked about it when the nurse wasn't in or the doctor wasn't in. We're not leaving.
We're staying. Yeah.
We had talked about it.
So then they were going to admit us, and they were like, we're going to give you morphine so that way you can try to relax, and we'll figure out basically what your plan is for inducing your birth plan or whatever.
Right.
But like Dave said earlier, it took a really long time for us to be admitted because so many people were having babies. So it was definitely at least 12:30, if not 1 a.m. when we finally got a room. And
they were nice. They were suites. There was only despite it being packed, everybody had their own room.
Yeah, you didn't have to share a room. Everyone had their own birthing suite with a bathroom and
they were
they were nice.
12 feet by 18
yeah,
feet.
there was a
big.
lot of space. You had in that room you had it pulled out flat, the chair, right? Or not yet?
No, that was the post.
The post. Okay, so Dave didn't have not that it's comfortable, but he didn't have a chair yet that would
turn into a bed.
So he kind of had to sleep sitting up all night, and they gave me morphine. And they're like, hey, we're just going to let you like get some rest and sleep. And hopefully you've made progress by morning. And I think I got like maybe 2 rounds of morphine. And I remember we watched Keeping Up with the Kardashians. I had that on the TV in the background.
You watched a lot of that.
For like most of that laboring process,
Mm-hmm.
that's like my guilty pleasure. So that was like, we found it on the TV and I did not move it from that channel. But yeah, I'm
and we brought like an iPad and a computer and
but we didn't use it until after.
correct.
Yeah.
But we brought that with us,
We
which
did,
is a good thing to do.
Yeah, and then I think no, you didn't bring our like main bags in yet.
No.
Yeah, we didn't, because
Yeah.
like we didn't have like a ton of stuff. Dave didn't have a ton of stuff because we still weren't 100% sure they weren't like potentially going to send us home in the morning. They were like, you just need rest and then we'll see what your body's doing or whatever. So I remember that night, like I didn't really sleep well. It was like, but the morphine definitely took the edge off and I was able to like relax more. What do you remember?
You got some spurts of sleep,
Yes.
but you generally didn't sleep.
Yeah. What
Like,
about you? Do you remember like sleeping a ton?
I think that I slept a little bit, like maybe an hour or two,
Mm-hmm.
but generally we were both up because I was rubbing your back.
Yeah, like it was almost like out of exhaustion. I would fall asleep for like 2 minutes and
Yeah.
then the contraction would come and I would be like, Dave, help me.
The morphine never worked fully. Not the
It
way
took
that
the
they said
edge
it was
off.
going to.
Yeah, it took the edge off for sure. And I
Because
remember
they were like,
feeling great.
with the morphine, you're gonna be able to get some sleep, and that was not the case.
Yeah, like I definitely would wake up every time I had a contraction, but it was weird because I would fall asleep in between the contractions.
Because you were just so exhausted.
Yeah. So then that morning, they came in to check my progress, and I think I was like maybe 1 centimeter.
At that point, yeah.
Yeah, like they were like, still not good. Like again, we see you're having like full
And at
contractions.
this point, we didn't have a huge birth plan. We didn't have a whole lot of things laid out.
Mm-hmm.
But we were shooting for a natural birth at this point.
Yeah,
So it's important to put that out there.
and like our birth, like I remember talking with you beforehand. Our birth plan was to like follow what the doctors told us.
yeah,
That was our birth.
our birth plan was go to the hospital and have a healthy baby.
Yeah. And that like every time they came in, I was like, so what's your recommendation as the OB? Like that's how they were like, okay,
Yeah.
so what do you want to do? And I was like, what's your recommendation? Like I'm in pain and not thinking straight. I need you to help me out here. But yeah, it was still like
Which
1 centimeter.
was good because at this point, because the day rolled over, it actually was a good thing because your OB was actually on call.
Yeah, that's right. So like my actual doctor was the doctor on call at the hospital. So I had him for this whole day, which was awesome because it was just nice to like have that familiar face there and someone who you're already comfortable like asking questions to. And
Yeah.
like
It takes some of the uneasiness away.
Yeah. So at that point, they started to talk to us about options for inducing or getting me to dilate more, because throughout the night too, like Owen's heart rate would decrease a little and then be fine.
They'd rotate you to get in.
Yeah,
a better
they would be like, "Hey,
position.
like sleep on your right side this time. Sleep on your left side.
because
sleep
like
on your back."
supposedly on your back it was supposed to be bad.
Yeah.
Yet for some reason it
Owen
actually
loved it.
it was good,
Yeah.
and there was a reason for that. But
Also,
We'll get
like
to
when
that.
you're contracting, I didn't at least want to be on my back. I wanted to be like in some sort of crouched over Gollum position.
yes,
So yeah, they started to talk to us about options for inducing. They talked about Pitocin.
yep,
They talked about like inflating a ball up there or like
Yep.
a balloon up there.
yep.
And again, I ended that like those are our first 2 options,
Yeah.
and I ended it with like, "What's your recommendation?" And they said the Pitocin.
Well, they actually did both.
They did the balloon thing.
They did the balloon thing too.
I don't remember that.
So they did the balloon thing first because they explained the Pitocin side effects and risks. And we said, well, why don't we try the balloon? Because that has a less the side effects. It's less aggressive.
Hmm.
So because the Pitocin had some fairly good side effects because it could get to the baby.
I don't remember that either.
Yeah. So we had done the balloon.
I have zero recollection of the balloon.
It didn't work.
Okay, maybe that's why
And
I
then
don't
we went
really
to the
have.
Pitocin.
Okay.
So we actually did both.
Oh, all right. So we did both.
We did do both.
We did it all.
Because they showed the little ball pump thing that they use.
Yeah. I mean, clearly it didn't work because
No, it didn't work.
I don't remember it at all.
Well, you were in between contractions, so it was
Yeah.
it was
I was
in
just
one
trying to
ear
get
out
through it.
the
And I
other.
will say, especially during like this day, which was January 29th, we had 2 nurses. So and they were both phenomenal. And the reason why there was 2 was because the second one, it was like her last day as
like a
like
training.
shadowing or training, and she was
Yeah.
like, tomorrow I'm literally on my own. And so it was kind of nice because she was basically like fully trained. It was just her last day of shadowing and like being paired up with another nurse. So we had 2 and they were awesome.
Both of them were, and sometimes it's hard with training hospitals, but the experience was fantastic, and they were both awesome, and they set your mind at ease, my mind at ease, and honestly, I think because she was going to be like full-fledged, she stuck by us like really, really closely the whole way through.
Yeah,
And she checked in
a lot.
and monitored because the heart rate was an issue all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was nice because they kept things light, as light as they could, but also like kept us super informed. So like she would come in, the one nurse that was like, it was her last day as like partnering up, and the next day she was on her own, but she would come in and be like, okay, here's what I'm doing, and explain everything to us and be like, I'm watching the monitor right now. He's dipping. Okay, his heart rate's dipping. Okay, move to your side. Okay, now I see it going up. So it was nice because for us, that made us like feel really good. Yeah, like not good because obviously his heart rate was dipping, but like
It made us feel more secure.
yeah, that we were like, okay, she's telling us everything that's going on because
you have the monitors, everything's hooked up, but you have no idea what's going on. And the alarms that happen, like I think I ended up Googling like how to read the heart rate machine just so I could like tell what was happening.
Yeah. But then she would come in and like go through everything she was looking at and like as what she was seeing, what she was hearing. And so that was really nice because like obviously we were anxious about that. Like whenever his heart rate would dip, we would get really anxious. And so she would walk us through that, which was really, really nice.
Yeah, that was overall just a really good experience.
And then we did the Pitocin.
Yep.
And that sucked.
They had to do that in the spine?
No, that was the
was in the
epidural.
spine.
Spoiler, I get an epidural. But the Pitocin, I think it was just through the IV. And it just makes like it tries to like speed up.
It makes the contractions worse.
Worse, yeah. To like get you more dilated.
Meanwhile, you've had 3 bags of fluid by now? 4?
I don't know. There were so many bags of fluid. I was so swollen. I don't know because they tried so many like things to get me to dilate more that it was just like, okay, we're going to put another bag of saline through and then we're going to push this through.
Yeah.
I can't remember what came with the Pitocin, like how much, but overall it was just a lot of fluid. And the Pitocin sucked bad because it just made my contractions that much more intense. And there was like some crazy, like, and we knew going in, like, I'm going to get an epidural at some point.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to have like a 100% natural birth. I wasn't striving for that. But I had a crazy moment where when like the Pitocin kicked in, I was like, well, if this speeds it up, maybe I can do this naturally.
I remember you saying something about the contractions early on being like, they're not that bad.
Yeah, and then
And then they got worse.
It was I do
You got a
remember
little
saying
cocky.
that was here,
Yeah.
sitting literally where we are, like right now on our couch in our family room. So naive of me
Yeah.
when they were like 8 minutes apart, and I was like, they're not that bad. So yeah, but I had a crazy moment where I was like, I can do this naturally, and then the Pitocin kicked in, and I was like, F this. But we did like for a couple hours, like ride it through.
Uh-huh.
Because I remember, I don't know if a nurse told us this or a coworker had told me this, but for some reason I had it in my head that like the longer you wait to get, like once you get the epidural, the Pitocin doesn't help as much to dilate you. I don't know if that's true or if it's just like a random fact I had in my head, but I felt like I had to go as long as humanly possible without an epidural so that way I could progress with dilation as much as possible.
I don't remember
I
any
don't
of that.
know. It could just be a
But
random
around
thing
that
I got
time,
in my
they
head.
did the epidural.
It was a couple hours of Pitocin.
Right. But after the Pitocin, you got the epidural. And apparently the epidural, so it does go into the spine, but it can go like, it doesn't go like straight in. It always kind of veers from one side to the other. And it still works. But what it does is it happens to numb one side more than the other.
Yeah. And like I was rolling a lot because they would be like, go to this side, go to that side.
And when you got the epidural, they had to actually physically roll you because you couldn't move your legs.
Guys, let me tell you, epidurals are the bomb. I remember the anesthesiologist coming in who was going to give me the epidural, and she would like put me in the position and then said that I needed to be in like to get the shot in my spine. And then like I started to have a contraction and I said, I can't do this. So like something like, I can't do this. It hurts so bad. And like I'm holding Dave's hands. And I remember her saying like, well, I'm trying to make this go away. I don't like, that's what I heard. I'm sure she didn't actually say that, but I remember just being like annoyed, like super annoyed because I was in the middle of a contraction and it just like blurted out of my mouth. But also like I didn't move a millimeter until she was done because I was like, I'll show you that I can do this.
I don't remember any of that.
I don't know. She probably was like, it's okay. That's why you're getting this, to make it go away. And I heard it with like a very aggressive tone and was like, I'll show you. So I remember being like, don't move a muscle when she does this.
Everything was very intense at this point.
Yeah.
Because everything was progressing, but it wasn't progressing the way that it should.
Yeah. Like by the time when I got my epidural, I was still only 4 centimeters.
Yeah.
Like I was not dilated very far along.
And this was what, now like 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon?
No, this was like noon.
Okay.
Yeah, noon. Because we had Owen around 3:41.
Right.
Around 3:41.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Within a couple of seconds.
Yeah, but the epidural, I remember saying to one of the nurses, I was like, whoa.
It made it so much easier. Because like I remember them saying like, you're having a contraction right now. And you're like, I am?
Yeah. Like I was like, no, you're lying. Because I think I remember asking them, am I even having contractions still?
Right.
I thought it had stopped labor completely. And they're like, no, you're having a huge one right now. But I was like, okay, like I can totally deal with
this. And eventually,
this.
as they got worse, you were starting to feel them a little bit. Yeah. But it wasn't anything near without the epidural.
Yeah. So basically the next like 3 hours were
just the same stuff.
The same. Yeah. It was crazy contractions. And like, I remember my right hip was horrible. And Dave would just like knead my right hip.
Yeah.
I would lay on my side and he would knead it.
It was a lot of contractions, rolling around, heart rate dropping.
A nurse or a doctor running in.
Yep.
Saying his heart rate dropped, but okay, we got it back to normal because they changed my position. And almost every time, not every time, but like every time my doctor would come in, I would say, okay, so am I going to have a C-section?
Yeah.
Because in our
And
birthing
they
class,
never at that point were like, yes, it's going to
no,
be
every time it was like, no, like we're not there yet.
Yeah.
We're going to try everything possible. You know, but we're not going to put you and your baby at risk, but like the goal is to have a natural birth.
And Owen was a textbook birth. And by that I mean it was literally every scenario in the textbook we did.
Yeah, so like every step leading up to a C-section is what happened.
Yeah.
We would joke that like, oh, this will probably happen next because
we remembered it in our birthing class.
Yeah, we remembered it in the birthing class. So like at one point they broke my water because my water still hadn't broken.
Yep.
And then filled me back up with fluid.
Yep.
To see if that would help like his heart rate.
Mm-hmm.
They put an electrode in his head.
Yep. They
like
put this little thing that like spirals in kind of like a spring to a pen, and it just the top of it goes into the top of the head.
So that way they could monitor his heart rate better.
Yep.
Yeah, and every time they came in, I was like, should we just do a C-section?
Mm-hmm.
So just for some background, and I may have said this before on our podcast, but my mom had 3 C-sections.
Mm-hmm.
My sister had 2 C-sections. And so I was like, there's a 50-50 shot that I'm probably just going to have a C-section. And I was totally fine with that. Like I wasn't going to be disappointed. I didn't go into it saying, I hope I deliver, like, obviously not like fully naturally because I had an epidural, but like naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But in my head, I was always like, it's also fine if I have a C-section. Like whatever needs to be done needs to be done.
You kind of had an idea that there was a very good chance the odds were going to be that we
like
would have
especially
a C-section.
as like each thing happened.
But you wanted to try doing it.
Yeah,
regular.
like of course, like I wanted to have like a normal, quote unquote, normal birth, right? But every time we asked, and then there was this one time when like we got pretty good at like understanding the beeps. And so I remember like his heart rate dropped. We looked at each other and said, they're going to run in again. And normally it was like 1 or 2 of them would come in and check. And this time it was like 7, 8 of them. It was like every nurse and every doctor that had like come in to check on us that day.
Yeah, it was
different.
All of them.
Yeah. And like our doctor sat on the edge of our bed and
this
he was like,
this was 5 minutes after they had just said we're gonna keep trying to do the regular birth. It was like
it was so close of like, yes, we're still going towards like a regular birth.
And then 4 minutes later, they all run in.
Yeah, so I don't know like exactly what happened, or I don't know if it was like, okay, once his heart rate drops X number of times, or if it was like if it goes below.
I think it dipped. It dipped hard.
Okay,
I think that's what it was.
All right, I don't.
From what I remember of the
specifically,
monitor.
but Dave would like
because remember,
stare at the monitor.
The nurse who was going to be full on, like the next day, she was standing there watching the monitor, like very, very strongly.
Yeah.
And then they came in.
Okay. Yeah, so it must have dipped super low.
Yeah.
And then they were like, okay, at this point, like, we're worried about Owen. And like we had told everyone what his name was going to be, so they referred to him as Owen. They were like, at this point, we're worried about Owen. We need to get him out. We're going to do a C-section.
That and trouble.
Yeah, and they were like, the running joke of the day was like, his nickname should be Trouble because he's just not like he's not coming out, but like he needs to come out.
Should have made that his middle name.
We should have.
Owen Trouble Kaser.
There you go.
Hilarious.
That would have been funny. So at that point, I remember like this paralyzing feeling because
I think you cried.
I cried. Yeah, like the doctor started to leave and I started bawling, and our 2 nurses were like, "You're okay, it's fine. Like people have C-sections all the time." And I was like, "No, I don't care that I'm having a C-section." Like we knew. I was like, we knew we were having
had a conversation
C-section
30 minutes before that. We knew that it was going to happen.
We literally looked at each other and we were like,
because
hey,
there were no
we're
other
having
options.
a C-section today.
There were no other options in the book. Everything we had done at that point.
But what freaked me out was the fact that they were like, hey, Owen's like at risk now. We need to get him
Yeah,
out.
it
And
was a
that's
safety
what
thing.
freaked me out was like, I need my baby to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel in that moment?
I was freaking out. I was very like at that point all the scenarios run through your head and you're like, okay, so this is obviously really bad. And the way that they were describing it to us was in the simplest terms, but I don't think maybe the severity of what was going on was ever conveyed to us.
Yeah.
Which was intentional because there'd be panic and your heart rate would be going up, the baby's heart rate would be going up. I'd be panicking. It wouldn't be good for anybody to maybe know that much. But looking back on it now, I'd love to know like the stats, and then like ask Dan, my brother, who's a nurse in the pediatric ICU, to be like, listen, how bad is this?
Yeah.
Or how bad was that what was happening at the time? Because it did escalate. It seemed like in a very short period of time.
Yeah,
it
like
just,
you said, in
got
5
crazy.
minutes, it went from like, we're still on the monitoring path to like,
Mhm.
it's go time.
Yeah. And we actually have a picture somewhere of the heart rate monitor and the graph. I should show that to him and just be like, what do you think of that?
Yeah.
I'd be curious.
Yeah, you should. But yeah, so then they left us alone for like 30 seconds and they were like, we'll let you two like have a
Yeah.
moment.
And we just were like,
Yeah.
we knew this was going to
Yeah,
happen.
we were like, we knew the C-section was happening.
Mhm.
It's just we're nervous about the baby. Like,
we have to do it for the baby.
we're really nervous about Owen because like the attitude of everyone shifted.
Mm-hmm.
And I do remember my doctor saying, like, I'm going to have this. I don't remember if they were an intern or, I don't know, a fellow. I don't honestly, I don't know the terms or levels
Mhm.
of doctors in the hospital. My knowledge comes from Grey's Anatomy, so it's not great. But I remember him saying, like, she's going to assist. And my head did go to Grey's Anatomy, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have someone like straight out of like medical school who's going to be
Mhm.
assisting. But then I think she must have seen my face because she was like, you're literally my 103rd C-section. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, we're cool.
Yeah.
We're good.
It wasn't this time that we had a learning.
Issues. Yeah. So this next part is such a blur for me because it felt like within 30 seconds, we were down the hall in the operating room and I was they used like my epidural line to like numb
Mhm.
me. And I just remember asking the anesthesiologist, I'm not going to feel anything, right? I'm not going to feel anything. And I was really paranoid that I was going to feel something. But that's like, I'm sure it was longer than 30 seconds, but like that's all I remember.
Did they put you under?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. They
No,
just
no.
numbed the area.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't know what happened before I got there because they got you all situated, everybody in the room, and then I got all my gear on
Mm-hmm.
and
Your PPE.
my PPE gear, and walked in and sat next to you. I think we were just having conversations to kind of take your mind off it, and I couldn't see anything.
Yeah, because they have
They got the curtain
the
up.
curtain up.
Yeah. But it in total was like 20 minutes, I want to say.
It was fast.
It was definitely under 30 minutes.
Yeah, it is. Well, I do remember like laying on the table before you came in thinking, wow, like I'm just naked on this table. Like, and there were like drapes
Yeah.
and stuff. But for like a hot second, I was just, before they put all the drapes on and
Yeah.
did like clean the area for the incision, I was like, I'm just laying here with like everything hanging out in the open.
They had seen it all.
I'm sure. Yes, I'm sure. But I remember having that like that split moment thought of like, oh,
Yeah.
geez. And then you came in and they were like, you're going to feel a lot of pressure. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. It'll be fine. The pressure's wild that you feel. And it feels like it's in like, because of where you're numbed, it feels like it's like,
Inside you?
yes, but like in the middle of your chest. Like I felt like they were cutting in the middle of my chest. But it's obviously like
But it was actually like below your navel.
your pelvic area. Yeah. But it's like that's where I felt all the pressure and I was like, where are they cutting? Like this doesn't like you have that moment of panic and
She was just really training.
yeah, wrong section, but it was like it was wild the pressure you feel because you're numb but you can still feel things happening. It's nuts.
And then, I mean, the baby came out. So the prep, I shouldn't say it was like 30 minutes. The prep and all that happened was a little bit longer, but from when I got there to when the baby was there and we left was like 30 minutes. It was like really quick.
It was quick.
They stitch you up fast.
Especially in comparison to our next experience.
Right. But because I think they pulled Owen out and they were like weighing him and we could hear him crying but I was sitting next to you, so I was like, I don't know if I'm supposed to go over there or if I was supposed to like wait or
I remember like really sure. Hearing his cry, like crying, and then like we were looking at each other, just hearing him cry, and then I was like, go to him. Go to him, Dave.
And he was like so little and just like wrinkly and he had, because he had been in there so long, he had pooped at this point.
Yeah, he pooped.
The mercom, or
in me.
What do they call it?
Meconium or something.
Yeah, meconium. Which is just like...
It's fine.
But he was like covered in it a little bit. It's kind of weird.
But then we found out why his heart rate was so horrible and why he wasn't dilating.
We did. We found that out while they were stitching you up, I think. They told us this. So... He actually had turned out, and we were always concerned when we went to our appointments because we could never tell what position he was in, and he seemed to move around a lot.
Yeah, he was always in a different always in a different position.
He was facing down towards the end, but it was.
But for a while, they were nervous that he was like still breech,
right?
And then he flipped down.
So it had turned out that his the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck.
Twice.
Yeah. So that was the reason why Becky had to lay in weird positions because the positions were either, putting pressure
or put pressure on the umbilical cord.
Right. So that ended up being the reason. So he never would have been a natural birth. It just never would have happened.
It would have been real bad for both of us.
Yeah. Yeah. So luckily, everything went fine and there were no side effects or he was born a healthy boy.
Yeah. 7 pounds, 5 ounces.
Yeah.
5.6 ounces.
Yeah.
To be very specific. I remember that. But when it was like 3:41 p.m. and yeah, I remember like at this hospital, it wasn't the practice to like put the baby for C-sections to like bring the baby to the mom and put it on the mom's chest. So I had to wait. But I do remember, I sent Dave over and was like,
and I showed you pictures and videos.
You did. You brought me videos. You brought me pictures, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's so cute. And I immediately was like, he looks just like you, Dave. And then I remember feeling like kind of out of it.
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, like you're all stitched up. We're going to bring you to your recovery room. Do you want to hold him on the way? And I think initially I was like, can Dave just carry him? Because I remember being like, I am in no state to like hold him. Like I don't feel like I was really out of it. But they were like, well, either like a nurse will bring him, like roll him, or he can like lay on you. And I was like, okay, I guess you'll put him on me. And I remember thinking like, this is dangerous. I don't feel suited to like hold him.
Nor could you feel half of your body.
Yeah. And like, I remember they kind of sat me up enough to cradle him. But like the way that I felt like my torso was really like shifted in an awkward way. And you also can't really feel half your torso. So I remember like very vividly that like ride in the bed from the operating room to the recovery
Mhm.
room, I was like, don't drop the baby. Don't drop the baby.
And we were in recovery for a little while.
Yeah. We were there for a while, and I kept asking you for a real meal. And I made him ask the nurses if I could eat something substantial, I think is the wording I used.
And they're like, you just had major surgery. You shouldn't eat it.
Yeah, they were like, you had major
Here's ice
abdominal
chips.
surgery. I was like, I just want like a sub.
And that's when the whole breastfeeding thing happened.
Yeah.
The whole
I didn't even
saga
put
of
that in my notes because
It's a trigger.
it's a trigger.
But in short, he did latch for like a hot second,
The first time he
Yeah.
like kind of latched.
just to give us a little bit of
he
hope.
fake latched.
It didn't never take.
No.
And we talked about that a little bit on the feeding side of it, the SNS and the formula and
Yeah.
supplements and pumping and all that kind of stuff. And that was all the rest of the time in the hospital.
Yeah, it was just fighting Owen with feeding.
Yeah.
Or like fighting the lactation consultant. Not fighting them, but like you're just so hormonal at that point, and you just
and they walk in like you're doing it wrong. Well,
Yeah.
Owen
I
had,
don't
and
know
one
what
of the
I'm
nurses,
doing.
one of the lactation consultants or nurses was like, he's got a really strong neck.
Because he was forcing
'Cause
his head away from my
he
breast.
Would push so hard back that you could not get, like you felt you were going to hurt him.
Yeah, he's
by
a
how much.
newborn baby. He's
Mhm.
like a day old, and I was like, I don't think I should be fighting against him
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah.
To like
And
force
and
him
that
on.
being said, he took to a bottle immediately.
Yeah,
A bottle,
it was
the bottle
good. We
nipple.
should have just
and-
bottle fed and called it a day then.
Yeah, I think that, had that happened with Emily, we just would have been like, yeah, that's fine, whatever.
Oh yeah, 100%. I was.
But we were like,
whatever.
we're supposed to do it this way, so we kept
Mhm.
trying, and it just made everything more painful fighting that than just going with what he wanted, which was
Yeah.
And there was a tongue tie thing that they said he's got a little bit of a tongue tie, so that might be having a latch problem. So like, do you want to cut it? And we're like, we don't really want
We
to
didn't. Yeah.
cut anything.
And he's fine now. We never did anything with his tongue.
No,
and he's fine now.
He talks fine
Yeah.
now, and it all worked out.
He's very sassy these days, but that's nothing to do with
No.
anything to do with his tongue.
And obviously, there's other stuff with the stay, and we were there for 3 days, and
Mhm.
all that kind
We've
of stuff.
talked about that a little bit, I think,
Yeah.
already in other podcasts, but
Yeah, so we probably won't get like
that
super
was,
deep
like,
into that.
the birth of Owen,
It was extremely chaotic.
it was.
So we were so excited when we were going to have our second baby, and like we had experience, we had been to the hospital, we knew what was going to happen.
Plus, we had scheduled that C-section. I had the option
Yeah.
to try for another natural birth, and I
Yeah.
was like, listen, I don't want to go through everything that I went through
Yeah.
last time. I just want to schedule this and like
Walk in, walk out with the
in.
baby.
Yeah, like walk in and know that like an hour within walking in, I'm going to have this baby. I don't want to go into labor ever
Mhm.
again. And like,
We didn't want any surprises. So we thought
yeah,
it'd be great
I
to
didn't want to
schedule
go
it
through
and-
labor again to
Mhm.
like, then, and it probably wouldn't have happened again, but like, it was really scary. Like I said, that
Mhm.
time when they were like, now we're worried about Owen real bad and we
Right.
need to get him out.
So
I
we-
didn't want to go through that again.
Right.
So we
were-
scheduled it.
We scheduled it, and we thought this is going to be great. This is going to be something that was like, you walk in, you have the baby, you stay for a little bit, and you walk out.
Yeah. Because
then-
there would be no labor associated with it.
Right. And then COVID hit.
Mm-hmm. And we were like, oh, cool. Let's have the
And-
majority of this pregnancy during COVID.
Yeah. So all the best laid plans went to crap.
Yeah. But Emily was scheduled for her C-section August 31st. It was
Yep.
a Sunday.
Mhm.
And I was super excited because she was scheduled for 39 weeks. And I was like, I don't have to get anywhere near 41 weeks like Owen.
Yeah.
I was so excited. I was like, yes, 2 weeks less of pregnancy.
Mhm.
This is going to be awesome. And I was very excited
Yep.
that she was going to be off. For whatever reason, I was like, yeah, it's awesome. She's going to be August. Because I think I was just ready to be done.
Well, and we thought it'd be cool to have the same month birthday that that I have,
That you
because I
have,
was
yeah.
I was born on August 27th,
And we got married August 19th.
yep. So,
So
a lot of stuff's happened in
It
August.
was
So
going to be
just,
like a fun month.
yeah, poor Owen.
We're both winter babies, Owen
Yeah.
and I.
But we were super excited about that, and I honestly don't remember when the contractions started.
So I had way more Braxton Hicks my second pregnancy.
Oh, that's right.
And there would be nights when I would have these like really intense cramps, and they would last like 20 minutes straight, and then they would stop, and sometimes they would come back again. And I was like, Dave, this is weird. And I remember one time I went into the doctor and was like, I'm having these weird cramps, and they checked and they were like, it's Braxton Hicks, you're fine. But this night it was the 26th, and I do remember like I was like they were more intense than normal, and I was like, haha, Dave, what if I go into labor tonight and this baby's born on your birthday? And Dave was like, yeah, but this has happened before, it's not a big deal. So we went up to bed, and we laid in bed for, I think I only laid in bed for like 10 minutes, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, these contractions are pretty bad. There was no regularity to them. And they had told me, like, because you're going to be a C-section, if you do start having contractions early, like, whenever there's any regularity to them, like they're like 8 minutes apart, 7-8 minutes, you should call us.
Yeah.
But it was nowhere near that. But I just remember, like, they're more intense than they have been throughout my third trimester. So I was like, Dave, you go to sleep. It's fine. I'm going to go downstairs. And I watched this show on, I can't remember if it was Hulu or Netflix, but it was like a bridal shop in London, and like like people trying on wedding dresses. And I love shows like that. So I just like watched a ton of episodes.
It was like a British say yes to the dress.
Yes, exactly. A British say yes to the dress. And throughout that, I started to like, I was timing them using an app, and I started to have they were more frequent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once they got to like about 7 minutes apart, I went to the bathroom, and I called the doctor. I don't know why. I just remember specifically I went to the bathroom and then I called the doctor. And I remember the on-call doctor being like, so do you think this is it? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know.
That's why we called the doctor.
Like, I just remember the doctor saying if you start having any type of like regularity with them to call. And so they're like, oh, well, come in and we'll see what's going on. And this was probably like 1 a.m. at this point.
It was late.
It was really late, yeah.
Or early, depending on how you look
Yeah.
at it.
So I went upstairs, woke Dave up. We had already had our bags packed.
Yeah.
And called my mom so she could come over.
Because we had Owen at this point,
Mm-hmm.
so we had just kind of left him.
I know. And I remember like my C-section on the 31st was scheduled early, and we were going to have to leave the house at like 5 o'clock because the C-section was scheduled for like 7:30 a.m. or something. And I remember telling you, I know Owen doesn't get up till 7, but I'm going to wake him up to say goodbye.
Yeah.
But we didn't get to do that
No.
because it was like,
And this was the first
1
time
a.m.
that we were ever away from him. We
yeah,
had every intention of doing it before, but it just didn't work out
because pandemic happened.
Right.
Yeah.
because we had nowhere to
Yeah,
go.
like we had never spent the night away from Owen before we got pregnant again, but we planned on like doing a couple practice weekends or something, or being like, okay, you're going to stay with this Nana, or the Nana's going to stay with you, and we're going to like stay in a local hotel. But it never worked out because obviously she was born middle of pandemic.
Right.
So yeah, I remember I actually wrote that down, being really sad that I didn't get to say goodbye to Owen.
Mm-hmm.
And not that we like knew this was 100% it, but
But
like,
it could have been.
But it could have been.
And it was.
And I do remember, like, my mom came over and, like, we were all wearing masks because, like, my mom was coming over to help watch Owen while I was working from home, as your mom was.
Right.
But we all wore masks when they were here.
Uh-huh.
So, like, she was coming over, we put our masks on, and then, like, my contractions stopped. For like a half an hour. They just, not a half an hour, but maybe like 20 minutes they stopped. And I was like, should I just call the doctor back and say they stopped? But then I had another one, and then I had another one. So I was like, okay, we'll go. Just to see what's happening.
Right. And so we went there, and we were in triage. And they hooked everything up. And again, they tried to send us home.
They did. And I remember they were like, because I wasn't dilated at all. And I was like, okay, but like I'm having contractions. And they were like, yes, we can see you're having contractions, but you're not dilated.
And there's like, another situation where it was just going to be, okay, so we're going to go home and in an hour or two, we're going to come back, which was just silly.
Yeah. And I remember
but it was
looking at you
in a hospital during pandemic.
Yeah.
So it was a little weird.
It was because you're like, I don't really want to be here, but like I have to be here.
Right.
And I remember like panicking to you a little bit, being like, I don't know when we need to come back then. Because they said come back when they're like 7-8 minutes, or like call when they're 7-8 minutes. And like, and then once we got back to the hospital, they were like a more regular frequency again. So it's like, if they send us home, I don't know when to come back.
Right. So they checked you. I don't think you were dilated at this point.
No.
And then they had us sit. Well, they gave us the option again. They said, you can either stay and we can put you under observation for like an hour or something, or you can go home. And we
chose to stay.
Which we did again. We chose to stay. And we were just so hopeful that, and again, we didn't bring any of our bags in or anything like that because we weren't sure. But we were just like, please let it be dilated. Please let it be dilated. And then I think an hour passed. And
still nothing.
It wasn't.
It was still nothing. But by that point, it was like 2-3 a.m.
Yeah.
So they were like, we're going to admit you only to give you morphine again. So that way you can sleep. Because at that, like, you had maybe like 2 hours of sleep before I woke you up.
Yep.
And I hadn't slept at all. So they were like, our goal is to stop your contractions so you can get to 39 weeks. Because
which is the last thing that you wanted to hear.
I was so annoyed, and I got it. Like, the tiny rational part of me at that time was like, it's better for the baby for you to get to 39 weeks.
Correct. And that's what they kept repeating, is that there's still some developmental things that need to happen. So
yeah, like it's better for everyone if you can get to your C-section date. But I was like, not having it. I was like irritated, and I was like, because again, I didn't know when I was supposed to come back then, because besides that one like 30 minute patch where my contractions stopped, they were like still very, like they came back and like continued to be very regular. So I was like, I don't want to be sent home. I'm going to be so pissed. So they gave me morphine. We got checked into like a room.
It was a room. It was weird. It was a small room, just us.
It had no window.
It had no windows.
Which I like maybe they gave us so we could sleep, but like there were no windows.
We didn't really
I think
sleep.
like you were in and out a little bit.
All I remember is that there was like a very Brady renovation
on HGTV. And like
watched all of it.
Yeah, like I was supposed to be relaxing and like having my contractions stopped, and they never stopped, and I didn't sleep a wink.
No. I think I got a little sleep just because I was exhausted, but you were awake the entire time.
The whole time. Yeah, and I remember saying to you, like, this doesn't feel like the morphine from last time. Like I can't even relax in between contractions. So I can't remember exactly.
And we were in there for a while.
Yeah, like they didn't come in until I want to say close to 9 o'clock.
We thought that they forgot about us.
Yeah, and like I think this happens in every hospital, but they're like, we're gonna come back at 7:30, and then an hour and a half later, they actually come back and check on you.
I think we hit a shift change. I think that's what ended up happening. So like 15 minutes before, 15 minutes after, so it pushed it back like a good 30 minutes.
Yeah, but then Yeah, it was like definitely after, like we were waiting for that time frame, and then it came and went. And then they finally came in to check me,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like 4
I
centimeters
was going to say
dilated.
4 centimeters.
Or they said it in like a term, like they didn't say you're this many centimeters dilated. And I was like, what does that mean? And she was like, oh, you're like 4 centimeters dilated.
And we were so excited because it meant we didn't have to go home.
Yeah. And she was like, you're going to have this baby today. We're good. Like, and she was like, you still good for a C-section or like something like that. And I was like, yeah, let's get this baby out. I didn't want to labor as much as I have already. Like, I did not want to do this again.
You were so excited to have not experienced labor for a second time, and you totally did the whole thing.
Yeah, I know. I was so annoyed because I
Plus
was
a couple
like,
bags of fluid because you really didn't want as much
I know.
fluid as last
I
time.
remember being like, I'm just going to have the fluid during the C-section and nothing else. And then, of course, they like.
I think there were more bags
It was
with Emily.
more. Yeah. So much fluid. I was so swollen. But yeah, they were like, you're going to have the C-section. And the one thing that did stink was no one from my practice was there. So it was the partner practice, which like is fine, but it's not any doctor
But it's
that
not
I've seen
having
before.
your doctor.
Yeah. And I was expecting a 25-minute C-section like I had last time.
It wasn't that.
That was not what happened. So what was similar was like the same pressure, but I was like ready for it this time.
Yeah, I was sitting next to you.
Yeah, you were sitting next to me. We probably felt like, we've done this before, like not a big deal. Because we would do that. We would be like, we're pros at this, let's go.
Yeah.
Oh, and we should mention, this is Dave's birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like the doctor was like, you're going to have the C-section today. And I was like, Dave, I guess you're going to share a birthday.
We share a birthday. She was born on August 27th.
Yep.
And I was born on August 27th as well. So we're exactly.
Birthday buds.
What is
34
it?
years
34
apart.
years apart.
Yeah. So we were really, really excited that like Dave was going to share his birthday with her. We like, that's super special.
Yeah.
Did you have any other, like, were you like super excited when you found out like it's happening and you were going to share a birthday, or were you just like not thinking of that?
I was thinking that it was cool. I was also thinking it was going to really tick off Owen.
Yeah.
Because like he loves like everything
About you.
right. And it would just be like we share a day and that would just eat him up inside. It's going to be awful in a month or when we have the birthday.
Yeah, we actually last night did some birthday shopping for Emily, and this morning we had accidentally left one of Emily's presents out, and I was like, "Oh, Dave, put this downstairs," and Owen saw it, and then I go, "Oh, Owen, that's because he looked at it and said mine," and I said, "Oh, buddy, that's for Emily, that's for her birthday," and he just started to cry.
Yeah, it's gonna be a hot
interesting.
Mess. But no, I was very excited about it. It's going to be really cool. It'll be something that we share. And it also takes the pressure off of me to have some crazy birthday every year where we can just have a kid's party.
Yeah, because you're not like hugely into your birthday.
No, why celebrate a year where you get older? It's like the worst part about getting older.
Well, now you can share it with Emily.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Dave and I were expecting a 25-minute C-section. And, I mean, she came out easy enough.
Yeah, the area where it ended up taking the most time was not the actual C-section itself. She came out fine. She was a healthy baby.
7 pounds, 12 ounces.
All that was all the same.
Mm-hmm.
It was the closing up that kind of extended
Took 90 minutes.
Yeah. It was
or like an hour.
So
at
long.
Least an hour.
It was so long that they broke their rule about giving the baby over to the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually put the baby on your chest so you could like hold her and look at her and I don't know, whatever you were doing.
Yeah.
which was really cool.
Which was great because we didn't experience that with Owen at all. But I remember thinking, like in birthing class, they said, and we didn't take a second birthing class. This was like from our very first birthing class.
Right.
But I remember them saying, at our hospital, we don't do skin to skin with C-sections. So you have to wait until you're in the recovery room. And then they were like, they had been like sewing me up for a while. And they were like, oh, do you want us to bring her over? And I was like, that's not allowed. Like this, but like, obviously I didn't say anything, but in my head I was like, that's not allowed.
Well, and obviously they have to talk to each other while they're in the operating room. And at one point in time, they had said, like, I can't remember if they said you did that wrong or, long story short, they had done a bad stitching job or they used the wrong kind of stitch. So they had to pull it all out and do it again because they were talking about, well, can you save it and use it later? But it had obviously blood and fluids on it, so you can't because of, bacteria. And I'm like, they are like screwing up. It was another teaching moment, and the person hadn't done like 107 C-sections. It's very well possible this was like their like first. It was just that's what held us up. The teaching portion of it, where the person who was leading it had to step in and do it.
Yeah, I don't remember much about the conversation they were having. I do remember all of a sudden the anesthesiologist was asking me a ton of questions, and I felt like it was weird. And now I think they were doing it to distract me.
He was an interesting person too.
He was, yeah. But like,
nice guy, but just very dry and
and like not someone who I thought was gonna like start asking me these very engaging questions.
If you had to describe him, he was like Dwight Schrute.
Like very to the point.
Yeah, very direct.
Yeah.
A little off-putting, but not had no intention of it.
Yeah, but then all of a sudden he was like asking me like not super personal questions, but like
more so than he was. Yeah. And you could tell that it was like not his forte.
Yeah, but I was like, this is weird. He's asking me these things. And the only thing I really heard was them telling the doctor who had done the stitches, and like, I don't know what stitches they were. I don't know if you do them one at a time or it's like, when I think of stitching, I think of like sewing a piece of clothing. So it's like one continuous stitch. I don't know the type of stitch they used on me, but I remember them saying, so-and-so doctor needs to practice this stitch.
Yes, I forgot.
And that's
that they
when
said
like
that.
I was like, what's happening? Like I stopped listening to the anesthesiologist and I was like, what the heck is happening?
There were like 5 or 6 people standing over you too.
Yeah.
And this time I like tried to peek over and look and see.
Did you see anything?
Nah, just the stuff they pulled out of you.
What did they pull out of me?
Placenta.
Oh, okay.
And a baby.
And a baby. That's true. Those things did need to come out. For a second, I was like, what did you see?
No, it wasn't like the whole like
my intestines?
Right. That's what my brain goes to too. Because I think someone at one point told us like they have to take out all your intestines and pack it back in.
That was a question I asked during birthing class. I said, when they take the baby out for a C-section, do they take your intestines out and then put them back in? And they were like, no, they don't. And I was like,
but I think you asked that because somebody told us.
Someone did tell us that.
I want to say it was like
dad told us.
I was going to say it was a family member that said that.
Because like my dad.
It might have been your
tells
brother.
This story. No, it's my dad because my dad tells this story about.
Well, because he had such good advice before.
Well, my brother didn't have good advice.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm joking.
But my dad, like I said, my mom had C-sections, and my dad tells this story about how he did like peek over the curtain during one of the C-sections, and he remembers seeing my mom's intestines and thinking they're so pink and healthy, which is like a really weird story.
Also, how would he know? Pink might not be healthy.
I don't know. It's just I remember him telling that story, which prompted me to ask that question at birthing class. And they don't pull all your intestines out and put them back in.
No.
Because I was worried. I think my question was, how do you know where to put everything back?
Well, they take a picture and then they match up the picture.
They were like, that's not how that works.
It's like one of those books where find the difference. But it was different. So all that aside, we had a healthy baby. Mm-hmm. But what was interesting is a couple of things were different postpartum. So because it was COVID, we really weren't allowed to leave the room.
Mm-hmm.
The hospital that we were at was known for this really great breakfast, which was a good breakfast. But that was all gone because it was a buffet style. It was a buffet style breakfast, and it was very good, especially for a hospital. But it was like, average hotel breakfast, but really, really good variety of stuff, and it was actually very tasty because we had it with Owen. But one of the other things too that we were supposed to do was like walk the halls, get the swelling down, move the fluids around, and we really weren't allowed to do that other than walking to go get water. And I think that every other room was occupied, like the side by side rooms. Like we didn't have any neighbors. It was like our room, an empty room, and then another room with somebody in it.
Mm-hmm. And if you left the room, like if you wanted to go get food, or like Dave couldn't leave the hospital, but if he wanted to get food at like the cafeteria in the hospital, or if we wanted to have something delivered, he could go down to the lobby and pick it up. Yeah. But like if he left, he wasn't like able to come back necessarily.
Yeah.
And Dave was able to leave the room to get like water, ice, all
the one thing they did let me do is when we were leaving, go down and get the car seat.
Yes, you were able to do that.
Totally forgot that the second time around.
You weren't technically leaving. They were like, you're not leaving the hospital premises because you're just going to the garage.
Yeah.
But like if I left the room, I had to call down to the nurse's station and let them know. So I just never left the room.
No, I went down and got the food.
Yeah. But like it was harder because with Owen at like postpartum, I walked the halls a lot, just to like get up and get moving.
Well, and we had to wear masks even in the room. We really
and I felt horrible because sometimes like I would forget to pull it up, and I would tell the nurses, I was like, you need to yell at me to pull it up. Like don't like
they were okay about it.
Yeah, they were very nice about it.
Because we all had COVID tests. That was another thing. We had to get
COVID tests
before we were admitted.
Yeah, we got it in triage, but I was like, no, remind me. Like, I have like crazy hormonal mom brain. Like, I'm not going to be upset if you say, can you please put your mask on?
And another thing that was different. So, getting sleep is a huge thing. And one of the ways that you're able to do that is by using the nursery overnight. And the nursery overnight was not available. It did end up looking like it was.
They did offer it to us, but we didn't feel comfortable because of COVID.
It was limited though, because when we walked in, we were told that it wasn't necessarily a thing, and then it did end up being an option for us, but we didn't put her in the nursery.
No, yeah,
she ended up being a good sleeper.
No, she wasn't. Owen was a great sleeper. Emily started cluster feeding like night 2,
but big difference. She latched,
yeah. Which, if you've listened to our other podcasts, you know this. But she latched right away.
And the funny thing about latching babies is it only requires one person to feed them.
Yeah, so Dave got to sleep more, which is why he doesn't remember that I was up every hour feeding her in the hospital.
I don't.
So, like, not only did I not sleep the night before she actually was born, but I literally got 0 sleep every other night because she cluster fed all night.
Yeah, that was definitely a double-edged sword on that. But yeah, there were definitely some big differences having a baby in COVID, and there's probably some other things that we just aren't specifically remembering. But how I wanted to wrap this up is things that we learned. Not that we're going to do it again.
We're not.
But our takeaway from it. So for instance. Pack basically no clothes. You really don't need a change of clothes. C-sections, you're there for 3 days.
But COVID was a day less.
COVID
Everything
was
was a day less.
We had the option of staying. That was another thing. We had an option of staying
Oh
an
yeah,
extra day, but
but
we were
I
like,
was like, we
we're
want to
good.
go home. Yeah.
And then a regular birth is like 2 days. But we brought a bunch of clothes, I think, for Owen, and we used virtually none of them. I think I was in the same outfit I arrived in.
Yeah.
And you were in a gown the entire time.
The whole time.
And I think you even brought your own gown, and I don't think you ever even wore it once.
No, we packed so much the first time and
what we
used
didn't
literally
pack-
2% of it.
Yeah, and what we didn't pack were a bunch of snacks. Snacks are what you want to pack.
That's what you want.
Clothes you don't need. Definitely bring a pillow and a blanket, because if your significant other is there, they don't take priority. So there's always a pillow and blanket shortage. They'll give you something to sleep on, but if you need a pillow or a blanket, there's a good possibility you're not going to have one. Plus, their pillows are awful.
Yeah. So our bag looked very different for the second time. We had way more snacks. It was like half snacks, a pillow and a blanket for you, because I was going to have my pillow and blankets, whatever I needed. And like, I literally brought like one outfit to go home in.
Yeah. Instead of 2 duffels, we brought 1 big suitcase.
Which was mostly filled with food and snacks.
Yeah, we still ended up buying dinners and lunches and stuff. But
Well,
you were
yeah, we had
meals.
we had the meals provided, and I think you had meals provided too, right? The second time.
I don't remember that. I don't think I
The
did.
first time you didn't, but I think the second time you did because of COVID.
Maybe, but I still went down to the cafeteria.
Yeah, you would still get food. Maybe you didn't get meals provided.
I don't remember getting meals. I ate some of yours when you weren't eating it, but
Yeah, maybe you didn't.
so that was definitely
But yeah, and like the second time we didn't have visitors, obviously.
that was another COVID
So
thing.
like
no
nobody
visitors.
met, which was kind of nice because it was just us,
Mm-hmm.
and the baby.
Yeah.
That was nice. But also like there was no one to bring us food.
Yeah, that stunk. I remember your parents specifically brought us brownies for Owen, and they were like the
They were
brownies with
so
the chocolate
good.
frosting. They were. I think that's when
Mom
we
brought
realized
us
it.
like lunch, like DeBella's or Wegman subs every day for lunch.
Yeah,
with
it was
Owen.
awesome.
So we were on our own for the second one.
But we also, another thing that was like great to have was the computer. So we could watch. I think with Owen we watched a lot of Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
And then with Emily, I think, was it The Office, or I don't remember what we were watching.
What was it?
We were watching
It wasn't
some
The
show.
Office, and it wasn't Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Maybe it was The Office.
Superstore.
Was it Superstore?
I think it was Superstore.
Okay.
But also bringing a power strip, something to plug all your stuff into, because there's like a finite amount of space, and
because
of it's
all the
plugged with
medical equipment
stuff.
needs to be plugged in.
Right. But I got to charge my phone and charge
Yeah.
your phone and all that kind of stuff. But they have Wi-Fi, so it didn't eat up anything.
Yeah.
Bringing comfy slippers or shoes.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big thing.
Yep.
Not that they might fit with all the swelling.
No, I think I just wore like the socks they gave you.
Yeah, and then you had that line on your foot from all the swelling.
Yeah. Both times.
I wrote down, take as many pictures and videos when you're there.
Yeah. Yes. That is because like they're never going to be that little again.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like I never looked worse than right after I gave birth. Like I look at some moms' pictures of like them with their child a couple hours after birth, and like they don't have makeup on and they look pretty good. And I'm like, I literally never felt or looked worse in my life than after I gave birth.
It's a big process. Plus, I mean, you were in there for 90 minutes the second time.
Yeah, and like the swelling was just
It's
intense.
the fluids.
The fluids just
The
like
fluids
they
really messed
just
it up.
like messed me up. Yeah.
But I think overall, like, listen to your gut. You know, that's probably the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
We listened to our gut both times, and both times it was right.
Yeah, listen to your gut and like listen to your doctors. That's all
Yeah.
I can say.
Know how to use your car seat.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Bring the car seat.
Yeah, make sure you have it with you. If possible, Don't have a baby during a pandemic. Although I wouldn't change having M during a pandemic at all.
No.
But it changes the experience.
I ended up getting a lot of time because of it.
Yeah. What was nice was because, like with Emily, like Owen was only 19 months when she was born. So, like if he had been able to come to the hospital, like we just wouldn't have had as much alone time as we did. So it was nice to have so much alone time with her before we went home. Because with your second, you just don't get as like that kid doesn't get as much alone time with you because they're siblings now.
And that's something I think we had talked about before too. Don't take the linens.
I maybe accidentally, with Owen, stole like the hospital receiving blankets. They were really cute and had dinosaurs on them.
You took some of the plain ones too that are white with green and red stripes.
Okay. When they were it was checkout. It's not checkout day. like
we were
like
checking
it's a
out
hotel. But the day that we were going home, they were like, okay, like you can take the diapers, you can take the wipes, but apparently they said all the linens go into this area. And I heard, take all the linens. So Dave was like, what are you doing? And I was like, they said we can take these blankets that like Owen had been sleeping in this whole time. And like we learned how to swaddle him in.
That was a whole thing.
Yeah. And I was like, they clearly said take them. And he was like, they clearly said put them in this like receptacle. But I still took a couple.
You did take a couple. We still have them.
We
They're
do.
Cute.
Yeah, we saved them. Sorry.
And I think the other thing is just to remember that like you're a team. You're both in it together.
But also your wife just went through something insane. So cut her a little slack.
I never.
No, Dave was phenomenal. Dave both times changed every diaper. Mm-hmm. I did not change one diaper while we were in the hospital. Mm-hmm. I do remember getting snippy with you a couple times.
With Emily?
No, with Owen.
I don't.
So maybe both. I'm gonna clearly both. I remember very vividly, like Owen was crying one night, like our second night, and like I went up to go over, and Dave just wasn't waking up, and I just started to cry, and like. Like he was crying and like I was like, how can he sleep through this? And my thought was, oh gosh, he's going to sleep through every cry ever. And so then I like woke Dave up and was like, is this how it's always going to be? You're not going to wake up to him crying? And he was like, I don't understand what's happening right now. It's 4 a.m. And I was like, Owen's crying and I need help and you're sleeping through it. I remember in the moment being really mad at you. Because you were going to sleep through every cry forever in the future.
Meanwhile, I had been up forever, and
yeah, you were just really tired. But
I honestly don't remember that.
I remember that.
Maybe I remember vaguely that. I don't know.
But just saying, cut your wives some slack because they just.
I didn't get mad about it.
No, Dave did not get mad about it. But I'm just saying the people who've not gone through it yet.
Yeah.
Like your wife or partner, like just either pushed a baby out or had major surgery. Mm-hmm. So,
cut them some slack.
Cut them some slack. They're going through a lot.
Yeah. It's being the support system is an interesting position to be in this situation.
Yeah.
Cuz you're there, but nothing actually happened to you. You were there the whole time, mm-hmm. but you're just there as, like I said, a support system.
Yeah, it's got to be weird being, right? Because I was like kind of the star of the show until the babies were born, and then they were the stars. But like up until that point, it was like kind of all about me.
Yeah.
So like, was that weird for you?
It wasn't weird as much as like, I just knew my role was to basically do everything. Because you couldn't.
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't get up and change a diaper.
Yeah,
you couldn't.
like if she was hungry, with Emily, if she was hungry, I was like, you
Right.
have to bring her to me.
For Owen, because we were pumping and feeding, like you couldn't get up and wash the bottles and the pump parts
Yeah.
because we had to do that in a bin.
Mm-hmm.
We had to wash all the pump parts every single time, which got really old really quick. And we still
did it for 6 months, and we still hand wash every night.
Yeah.
Ay, ay, ay.
And what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
But it was weird, but at the same time, it was like, I know I need to do this.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember when Owen started to like
you the best.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what he was thinking. I think it was after Emily was born is
You
when
think so?
like he always had, like, he was always a daddy's boy, but like it really became
Apparent.
super apparent and annoying for me.
Well,
once Emily was born.
I thought it was before that because
No, he definitely started
like a lot of
gravitate towards
times
you more.
I would feed him a bottle when you were pumping. So in the middle of the night, we'd wake him up, feed him. I'd feed him a bottle while you pumped.
It wasn't as aggressive until Emily was born.
And I think part of that is I took all 10 weeks. So in New York State, we get 10 weeks for paternal,
like family leave.
yeah, paid family leave.
And you hung out with Owen a lot because
Well,
I was always breastfeeding.
Right. So
Yeah.
basically, I watched Owen the whole time while you were hanging out with Emily, and I think maybe that was, and he got sick, and there was some other things too. But
Yeah, like that really solidified his obsession with you.
yeah, I think that's, yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. Now it's just irritating. Although I will say the last couple days,
He's really been all about
he's really
you.
been into me.
Yeah.
He gave me a new nickname, Mom. So yeah, we've reconnected on the nickname level. He also pointed to a picture of a skeleton in a book and said it was me. So there's also that.
So he thinks you're skinny.
There you go. Which means that you just probably gained some weight. I'm just so skinny.
I'm sure there's some ice cream in the fridge that needs to be eaten.
I'm on it. Well,
I think that's it.
yeah, those are our birthing stories, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And if you're pregnant, it's maybe helping you prepare a little bit.
You'll never be fully prepared, but
no, you're never going to be fully prepared. But
always
also,
try.
Like we said, this was kind of just for us too, to make sure that like one day when we don't remember all these details, we can listen back on it and make our kids, make Owen and Emily listen to everything they put me through.
Make sure that they know.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Spillproof podcast. As always, reach out to us at spillproofpodcast@gmail.com.
We'd love to hear from you all, and we can't wait to talk with you next time.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.